Welcome to the Answers for Elders radio show. Meet the trusted experts who will give you straight answers and will help guide you on the path of later life care. Now, here's your host, founder, caregiver, and CEO, Suzanne Newman.
And welcome back, everyone, to Answers for Elders Radio Network. And we are back with Steve Waltar in our final segment on trusts. And obviously, Steve, we've gone through the gamut of who should you choose, what the difference is between a trust and a living trust and a will, and all the things we touched on probate a little bit, but the privacy factor is huge. And obviously for a lot of people, this is a very important topic. But I would like to just go to the nuts and bolts, and let's just go back to basics on living trusts. And I'm going to ask you a question of the why. Why do people set up living trusts, Steve?
Yeah, I think it was Oliver Wendell Holmes said, don't put your trust in money, put your money in trust. What's behind that? Well, lots of reasons. I think, practically speaking, it's a great way to get organized. Who knows your assets better, you or your heirs? It's you. So you just get to clean up how you own things. And if you're married, you can go into the trust as your separate or as your community estate. Get you organized, and then you can make sure that anything that's in the trust is properly organized, and then other things that are outside of the trust can point to the trust, and it coordinates things.
Right.
The other thing, I think I'm even glanced at the wrong little, that's the wrong little deal. There's a handful of reasons, right? Why do people want to do a trust? Because you avoid probate, you maintain privacy, you get strong incapacity protection. It's more thorough than will planning. You have more documents. It's easier during your life. It's easier if you're incapacitated. It's easier when you die. It's harder to contest. It works in all 50 states. It's more flexible. I mean, I could go on. I mean, there tend to be a few downsides. It tends to cost more and be a little bit more work, but it's just, I don't need to sell a trust. I just need to ask what people's goals are. And many of those things cause them to want to do one.
Right. And when you really look at the whole picture of what a trust is, everyone has different situations, right? There's no cookie cutter solutions. And I think one of the things you talk about, a will just is a will, right? That's the cookie cutter. Yep. There's not much, but with the trust, you really you can design how your values and put your values forward and make sure that it is honored. And I think that is huge, in that realm. So if somebody's going to set up a trust, you said it's more money. How much more money is it usually from drafting a will? It's more hours, obviously, of an attorney's time.
Yeah, that's okay. First of all, my almost disclaimer, if you get a Michelin tire and it's exactly a Michelin tire, it's the same at Costco's is at, Big O or what's the other one? Yeah.
Discount tires, whatever.
Thank you.
Les Schwab, whatever.
All right.
It's the same tire.
Powers of attorney are very different between attorneys. Wills are different. Trusts are even more different. But in general, it's from $1,000 to $3,000 more maybe to do a trust. I mean, it's hard to know.
Worth it.
My father-in-law, he spent $7,800 doing a will plan. And that's more than a trust that I would even do for a single person today. So in general, it's a bit more. $1,000 or more is a good guess.
Yeah. I was just curious because I've heard horror stories from a certain attorney that goes around and he doesn't do what he should be doing, in my opinion. That's, so I've had these understandings of, wow, people have an image of it costs way too much money. But then again, I think in the long run, it's the best money in the world you could spend. If your values are that important, and it doesn't have to be what you think it is. I mean, I've heard stories that $30,000 to do a basic will, which is not ever. I mean, I can't even believe that that's that much money. So obviously, what lifetime benefits to live in trust, what do they provide? Because we talked a little bit about, final wishes or at the end of your life, but how does that play in with a trust?
Yeah, I think the lifetime benefits are ease of management.
Mm-hmm.
Powers of attorney are just not liked or accepted by a lot of firms, even though they changed state law in Washington, where you have some authority. If someone won't honor a power of attorney, you can kind of litigate against them. But it's just institutions don't like them. They like their own form. Trustee, everyone knows, trustee is the owner. They have full authority.
Right.
So it's a little easier to manage multiple assets.
Yeah.
If it looked like maybe there was going to be a death, it's easier to do gifting from a trust than under powers of attorney.
Oh yeah.
So
I never
that's a
thought
little
about that.
quicker. It's kind of nice to trust your trustee. Maybe you have capacity, you just want to hand it over.
What
You want
about
to travel? You let someone manage it. You want to see what it's like. That you can do that.
and I think too, in the case of illness, if your house is in a trust, you're not going to lose the trust due to healthcare costs, right? I mean, you're not going to lose the house.
Correct. Yep.
And that's huge. Yeah. So obviously there's a lot of different situations and in this area. And then we touched base on values. Values are not necessarily protected or admonished in a regular will or probate, correct? It's more into the trust. You can set it up what's most important to you.
Well, I mean, my firm is called Legacy Estate Planning. We have a legacy worksheet. Whether someone hires us for a will plan or a trust plan, we want to ask them questions that value who they are and what legacy they want to leave. But it's more likely in a trust or when something's held in trust that people are going to kind of set a vision and talk about a legacy and then implement.
And obviously in lifetime benefits, if in case of incapacity, it's spelled out pretty much in detail.
Yep. Another benefit during lifetime is actually flexibility of moving from state to state. You know, if you move to another state, are they going to follow Washington law in Idaho? I don't know. But it's a little easier to just toggle it and use state law. I mean, trusts work in all 50 states.
Interesting. So if you have it that, we touched on that and I didn't really pull that out. So if someone, let's say, drafts the trust with you in Washington State, they move to California or Arizona, it's still applicable. But a will may not necessarily be that applicable. Is that correct?
Well, we have full faith and credit. So a valid will in Washington should be valid in Ohio or Idaho. But the question is, which law do they use? Because probably they're going to use state law for the in-state real property, and then they'll use other law for the governing. It's kind of crazy. So it's a little easier in a trust.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Very interesting. And okay, so then I'm going to go back to, we have assets in a trust, but what assets should not be in a trust?
Yeah, that's a good question. It's fine to have, S corporations and C corporations and LLCs and real property, but what you don't want to have is retirement funds. And the reason is you don't want to change title on retirement period, right? If you take your IRA or your 401k, you take it out of your name and you move it into your trust, the IRS could consider that a distribution.
Okay.
Now you may say the beneficiary is the trust, or it's my spouse, then the trust, but that's different than ownership. So you don't want to change ownership on tax deferred assets. That's the big rule.
Okay. So obviously in this scenario, I just an example, someone owns stocks. What happens with that should go into a trust, correct?
Yep. You can transfer stock into the trust or a brokerage account, whatever holdings it has. That's done all the time. But you don't want to take your IRA or your 403B and say that it's no longer
Got it, because that's a retirement
trust. Yeah.
Got it. Okay. Well, that's interesting. So the next question, if house goes into a trust, how does that change my property values and my taxes on that?
That's a great question. Zero, not at all. So, I mean,
really,
it doesn't reassess it. It doesn't cause an excise tax. It doesn't change the basis. And then the real beauty is it doesn't penalize you either. So when you die, you still get a step up in basis to, if you paid 200,000, it's now worth 1.2 million. It still will be worth 1.2 million when you die. And then it goes to the kids free of taxes.
That's amazing. And then obviously, in that scenario, you are as far as personally, you're not taxed for income or anything like that. So if the house gets sold, let's say, for example, mom or dad move into senior living or whatever, that those assets can still stay in the trust. Is that correct?
They can stay in the trust, or they can be sold, and you can still avoid the 500,000 of gain that is the same as if you had a trust or didn't.
I was going to say, so capital gains, would that apply?
It's just a non-issue. It doesn't change anything.
Okay, so it's basically the same. So there's really no downside to going to a trust. So Steve, you have you sit down with every family, and every family has a million questions, and they're all unique. They're all situations are unique. Obviously you serve families all throughout the state of Washington, and they can reach you how?
They can call us at 425-455-6788, 425-455-6788, or through our website, www.waltar.com.
And mention this podcast, and you will receive a free upfront consultation. And Steve, I am so proud to have you as on our team. And I also want to mention to everyone that Steve will be being our expert on within the 8 foundational principles of wellness, which we call the Vitality Revolution. He will be our experts on financial wellness. How do we take care of ourselves financially as we age? And I'm so excited. We'll have you on national radio in August. So we're looking forward to having you then, and just reaching out to Steve on how do we start? How do you take your life and set a good foundation for your aging years? And thank you again for being on the program.
Thank you.
We at Answers for Elders thank you for listening. Did you know that you can discover hundreds of podcasts in our library on senior care? So visit our website and discover our decision guides that will help you also navigate decision making. Find us at answersforelders.com.